everybody. Spencer's not feeling well tonight, so I had to fill in. It's great players of the past. I half-jokingly said I would do Magnus tonight, and one of my customers believed me. So that would be a funny lecture. I mean, he's not as bad as he plays. Anyway, we're going to do Lubomir Kavalek because that's Karen's favorite player of all time. Right? And of course, as you know, his nickname is Lubosh. Naturally, I could give a 1-hour lecture without showing you any games because he's a very interesting character. Probably going to spend 15 minutes just talking about him. So go forward 15 minutes if you want to see his games, which you don't. I want to start with something I wouldn't normally start with the Kavalik. And the reason is Nigel Short has lectured here before and given a simul. And Kavalik used to work with Short and was his coach and team captain for one of the interzonal tournaments and for candidates matches. And during the match with Kasparov, I believe, for the World Championship, if you can believe that, and you know that Short beat Karpov the match before that to play Kasparov for the World Championship, they had a disagreement and then some, and they split up during the match, and they both wrote bad stuff about each other later. It was his fault, it was his fault. I don't know. Okay, that happens actually in chess a lot. People get mad at each other and separate because chess players are, you know, the alpha. Now, the other thing about Kavalik that's interesting, which I know, but I didn't think anybody else knew, but it's in Wikipedia. So I guess Wikipedia found out, or somebody put it in there. In 1979, as you all know, there was a super tournament in Montreal. That was one of the first super tournaments. Before that, unfortunately for Karpov, most of the tournaments he won in the 70s, especially when he was world champion, there was some Rufus and Doofus in there. There was like, oh, Karpov, he's good. Portisch, he's good. Who are those guys? There was a lot of that, actually. In Montreal, they didn't have any Rufus and Doofus. If anything, Kavalik was the Doofus, and he was number 10 in the world. So it's a tough tournament. And the reason I know a lot about Montreal 79 is I was there. And I was 9. And I played in a simul where I played a 1900 and I won a book in French. I wasn't speaking French when I was 9, or now, but in the middle I did a little bit. And we met Robert Hubner at his hotel. We were like stalking out the best hotel in Montreal and saw Hubner there. We got some autographs. Anyway, players like Spassky and Timon and Karpov and Larson played. And I could probably name all the players if I wanted to, but I don't want to. Anyway, the story that I know that you guys don't is Kavalik was one of the organizers of the tournament. The tournament was in North America, and he lived in D.C. still lives in D.C. area, rest of Virginia. And it's a double round robin, confusing the audience. So there were 8 players, I think. No. Maybe there were 10 players. Anyway, the point of the story is, and the story is here actually, I don't want to tell you the wrong information. Let's see, Bizarre Montreal. Okay, it was 10 players. So as you can see here, he had 1.5 out of 9. Not good. Then he got 6.5 out of the next 9, winning the second half. It doesn't say why, but I know why. He was the organizer of the tournament. He was busy. And then when the first half ended, he said, I'm not the organizer anymore. You guys take care of it. I'm playing. And then he played well. Yeah. So he still didn't finish very well, 7th out of 10, but he probably wasn't even rated 7th. He's probably rated lower than that, because that tournament was strong. And that was one of the first tournaments I remember, because I was 9, when I was 5, 6, 7, I don't remember, where it was clear that Korchnoi was blacklisted. Okay, and this happened, obviously, as you all know. Do you guys know anything? Korchnoi defected when it was the Soviet Union. You know what I'm talking about. You know. You're old school. And he was in Switzerland and Amsterdam, and he's like, I'm out. I forgot if it was I think it was Amsterdam. Then he lived in Switzerland. And he defected when that wasn't a big thing then. Grandmasters weren't defecting from the Soviet Union at that point. And Korchnoi was really good. He was top 5 in the world. So they didn't like that. So after that, when there were Super GM tournaments, the Russians told the organizers, if Korchnay's playing, we're not playing. So Korchnay wasn't allowed to play in tournaments where other Russian players played. There's a very funny story about that in Lone Pine, which is a very strong American tournament where you had to be 2,200 to play, and huge prizes because the sponsor had a lot of money. So the Russians are like, hey, huge prizes, we like that. And one year Korchnay wasn't playing, but he showed up. And the Russians were all there, and they called back home and they said, all right, I guess you're there to play. So that was unusual. I think that was 77. But anyway, so in 79 Montreal, Korchnay was not there. They should have been, but Karpov played and Tal played, and they tied for first. So that was a strong tournament. Anyway, so Kavalik was there. Kavalik wrote a chess column for the Washington Post for many years, and then the Huffington Post, which he might still do. Maybe that's over. Yeah. As he's been a famous writer also. Now, he's from Czechoslovakia. I want to say the Czech Republic, but it was Czechoslovakia then. Okay? And then in the late 60s, early 70s, transferred to the U.S. And the story they told, which I just read today for the first time, is during a tournament, in fact, 1970, he had the Czechoslovakian flag. Then at some point it was the American flag during the tournament. So I guess that's when he started playing for the U.S., 1970. He's tied for first or won 3 U.S. championships, all in the 70s. In 1978-ish, he was number 10 in the world FIDE. So he's a pretty good player for nobody to have heard of him. Okay, and he's played in many U.S. championships, but that was before I was playing. He's 75 years old now, so he doesn't play chess anymore. But he has a lot of coaching experience with a lot of the strongest grandmasters. They list some somewhere, I don't know, somewhere in here. He's been Czechoslovakian champion, U.S. champion, as well as etc. And then he won all these tournaments, second place, yeah. He played for the U.S. in many Olympiads, board 1, board 2, yeah. So he's a great player of the past, but the pretty recent past. He's also a great writer, a coach, won some matches. So yeah, it says he's coached Mark Diezin, who you guys haven't heard of. Maybe you have, maybe. Robert Byrne, Yasser Seirawan, Eugenio Torre, Eugene Torre, and Robert Hubner. And it says he was one of Fischer's seconds at the World Championship in 72. Very suspicious. And then they talk about the short incident where they came to fisticuffs, but not really. Just writing fisticuffs. Yeah. Yeah. Also, it says Gelfand, Karpov, Timon. They're pretty good. Okay. So he did a lot for chess in the organizing field, in the writing field, in the playing field, in the coaching field. Now, one thing it says on his Wikipedia, which I don't agree with, and it's a fact. So I guess maybe I'm wrong, because that's not something you argue about. It says he was inducted into the World Chess Hall of Fame some year. I don't think he's in the World Chess Hall of Fame. He's probably in the U.S. Chess Hall of Fame. If he's in the World Chess Hall of Fame, that would be shocking to me. He wasn't a world champion. So he's probably in the U.S. Chess Hall of Fame, and maybe they don't write it correctly. Or I'm wrong. On the video comments, you'll be like, what? Of course he's in the World Chess Hall of Fame. What's wrong with you?
Edit it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I'll edit it right now. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, there's your favorite grandmaster, Vishy Anand, and there's Kavalik. And what school did Kavalik go to? Old school. Yeah, those kids know. Yeah. Okay. Now, I'm going to show only 2 games. Usually I show 3, but I've been teaching chess camp. Anyway, let me explain something to the kids in the audience. That's what he looked like 50 years ago. 50. See that guy? You see that? And then that's 38 years ago, right? Something like that. And then the truth, and then there's also 30, and the truth hurts. That's what happened. Well, it's more than 12. That's 2011. Yeah. Okay. It's much funnier to look at Nun's Wikipedia. They show like 30 years apart. It's actually very funny. All right. It doesn't look bad. It's just funny. Yeah. So Kavalik was a great player, great writer, great coach, and one of his games, which we're going to look at today, I've analyzed many times. You can go to YouTube videos or chess.com or ICC or anywhere in St. Louis, and you'll find me analyzing this game. And not only is the game a good game, it has a name. Sort of like the opera game, right? This game has a name. Yeah, it's a very famous game. Unfortunately, he played for Czechoslovakia at the time. It was in the Student Olympiad when he was a student, and he has the black pieces. So just in case Mike Hummer's watching.
And you did start the screen capture.
Yes, of course. And this name, and when I say it has a name, I mean chessgames.com gives every game a name, but this name's really good. They call it the Kev Avalanche. Okay? And you're like, why do they call it that? Now you're going to find out. Okay? Now, Kavalik, unlike the players today who are total wusses, okay, this is the worst time to be a chess fan. All those guys are terrible. Okay? They play bad. They play for a draw. Horrible. You know what I'm talking about. And today in Norway, all the games were draws. And I knew they'd all be draws like 5 minutes in. I'm like, all right, they're all playing for a draw. Okay? Now, before computers, and when people actually tried, there were some interesting games. Really interesting games. Really interesting games. Like this one. And one of the most famous games ever, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, is Bagirov Gufeld. The so-called Mona Lisa. That's what he called it. Where he sacks all his pieces, and his queen moves in a circle and mates Bagirov. Yeah, that was a pretty good game, actually. Here, however, Gufeld gets the short end of the stick in this game. So this is in the Student Olympiad in 1962. That's so many years ago, I can't even understand what's happening. 7 years before I was born, and he was still good, right? And he was good in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and then in the 90s, more coaching. Okay, so he's playing for Czechoslovakia in the Student Olympiad against Soviet Russia, right? Now, wouldn't Czechoslovakia be told to lose then? What would Gerald Ford say? Anybody? You? Yeah, all right. Okay. Who made that joke? Yeah, Ford did, and then Carter laughed. Yeah, that's what happened, right? No? Yeah. You guys aren't history majors? No?
Not history.
Oh. Yeah, Gerald Ford said, when I'm president, no Russians will ever be in Czechoslovakia, in a debate, and then Carter started laughing. So, okay, so that was a Donald Trump moment, I guess. All right, so Gufeld's white, and they played the boring Ruy Lopez. It must have been a Berlin. Oh no, this is 1962, and the players didn't play for a draw every game. I'm sorry. So you know the Berlin where they trade everything and agree to a draw? Yeah, that's what they do now. Back then, let me show you what they used to do. Okay, they played bishop c5 and f5. They don't do that now. Now they have already agreed to a draw now. Confusing the audience. One of the great things about Kavalik was not only was he world class, he played a little bit crazy. Not totally crazy, just a little bit crazy. This game is nowhere near as crazy as the next one. The next one he didn't even win. That's how crazy it is. Usually when I give the great players, I show the games they won. But the next game's so crazy I have to show you. Okay. D4, confusing the audience, right? Okay. Karen's had this position often. No. Archer says it's too boring. More tactics. Yeah. All right, we're going to see some more tactics now. Takes the pawn, attacking the knight. Knight to g5. The bishop on c5 is still attacked. Bishop moves away. d5 attacking the knight. e3 confusing the audience. Now, let's see how confused they actually are. What is the name of that tactic?
Interference.
Interference. Yeah, there we go. So he's interfering with the bishop, which was defending the knight. Now the bishop's not defending the knight. So black can play queen takes knight. So everything's hanging. That's how they did it in 1962. No engines told them it was bad. They didn't have engines. Like, yeah, it looks good to me. I don't know. Right. Okay. Knight e4. Now remember, this is a student Olympiad. Usually the younger you are, the crazier you play. As Archer and Karen will explain later. Yes. Okay, So here all the pieces are hanging, and Gufeld's like, no, my knight on e4 is pretty good. Okay. Queen h4, scary, right? You're not scared? Should be, yeah. Queen f3. So nobody ever takes anything, they just defend. Knight f6, sacrificing a piece, and Gufeld's like, great, I like being up a piece. Takes with check, takes the knight, white's up a piece. Now, throughout the game, I'd like you to count black's pawns. Make sure they're all there. Are they all there? Make sure. We don't want them to lose any pawns. Take with check. The next move is iffy. I'm not sure that I like it. King d1. I don't think I like that move. Okay, now king f1, the rook on h1's no good. King e2 also looks a little risky. I don't like king d1. I don't like it. dc6. Now black has two threats, taking the bishop obviously, and bishop g4, which is even better. Right? Yeah. Now you can take this, but if you start taking things and leaving your king here, you're not going to like it. So Gufeld played the safest move ever. Also, you shouldn't take that, because then black doesn't have 8 pawns anymore. So how do I save my bishop and stop bishop g4?
Bishop e2.
Bishop e2. That's what he did. Yeah. I haven't seen this game in 2 years, but I remember that move. All right. Bishop e6. And black has 3 pawns for a knight. And black has lots of double pawns. Now, for years and years and years, I've read in many chess books, a pawn on the 7th is worth a rook. And then, about a year or two ago, I realized something. Pawn on the 7th is worth more than a rook. That's the Feingold rule. And this actually happened in round 4 of our tournament last weekend in the game between the two highest rated players. And what happened was Damir Studin and Yuri Barnikov were both about 2250. They were paired on board 1. The position was queen against queen and rook. However, black had 3 or 4 pawns for the rook, and one of his pawns was on the 7th rank. And eventually perpetual. Because the guy's down a rook, he thought, okay, that's good. Then he put it in the engine, and it said, you're +5. Down a rook, you're +5. And I was like, yeah, pawn on the 7th, that's worth more than a rook. And the computer's like, yeah, it's worth a lot more than a rook. So even though black's down a piece, that's a good pawn. This king's not very good, is it? Okay. Queen h5 check. King on d1's not very good. Okay. Now the king on d1's pretty safe. b3. Why did white play b3? What's white's next move?
Bishop a3.
Yeah, bishop a3 check, and then I can block my bishop on b6, boo, or block the d file. Ugh. Okay. And it's funny, where is this bishop going to go on this open diagonal? I mean, you can't go to g5, can't go to f4, can't go to e3. Why would I go to h6 or d2? But a3 looks okay. Bishop a3, knight to d2, king looks okay. Okay. Bishop d5, and after check, steps it up. Move your king up in the endgame. Now we're threatening this. That seems pretty serious. Okay? So bishop check again. Bishop h3. Good square for the bishop. No, terrible. Rook g8, winning the pawn by force. No defense. And now black has 4 pawns for a piece. Although some of the pawns are doubled and isolated. Now remember, I gave you guys a job to do before. Does black still have all 8 pawns?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, rook f1. Rook d8. Black gets all the pieces involved. King to e2. Now, in the professional opinion of this very intelligent audience, it's not a Three Stooges jury audience, that's for sure. Which black piece is needed out of the 3 to ensure this pawn is pretty well defended?
Bishop.
Bishop on b6. So once I play knight c4, that's the end of your bishop on b6. That's the end of your pawn on f2. Right? Well, we can't let that happen. And Kavalik probably realized, even in 1962, it's like, well, Ben's going to be born in 69, then streaming's going to start existing, and Ben's going to stream, and Archer's like, oh, I know what Ben's getting at now. His hand's way up now. So if this was my stream, what's the rule?
Always sack the exchange.
Always sack the exchange. Otherwise, you're going to lose your bishop, you're going to lose your f-pawn. Bam. I like that bishop on b6. All right, here comes the Kev Avalanche. All right. Now, Kavalik, Gufeld, he's like, man, that bishop keeps defending this pawn. Let's trade bishops. Then I'll go win the pawn. Always play bishop f8. And what White wants to do, well, there's two things he can do. He can come around the mountain when she comes, or he can play b4, bishop c5. All right. So Kavalik says, no, you're not doing that. No, you can't do that. And he's like, all right, b4. Now, for everybody's favorite move of the game. How do we make sure we keep this bishop? Because White's going to play bishop c5, and that's the end of our bishop.
Bishop e3 check.
Then the king moves to e2, and then bishop c5 is coming. Although you could play b6. So actually what you said is pretty good. Problem with bishop e3 and then king e2 is neither one of these pawns can move. You're blocking this pawn, and this pawn can't move because it's defending the bishop. Your move's too reasonable. We need a crazy move. We got to keep our bishop forever. Now, let's pretend it's my stream again. That might help you get the right answer. Same as last time. Sack the exchange. Rook g5 was played, and then he took it. That's good bishop. Now, Black's next moves are going to be f3, e3 check, e2. The truth hurts. You can easily stop that. I just don't know how. Well, you can do it. How many pawns does Black have? 8. So Black has a bishop and 5 pawns for 2 rooks, just like in most of Karen's games. Right? No. Now the audience was confused. Again, one of the things you have to realize, this is a student Olympiad. These are younger players. This is what they like. Right, Archer? Yeah. All right. Rook b1. The idea of rook b1 is very funny. Rook b4, rook d4. Okay. And he did it. And now he takes it and plays king f4. Now, I don't know what the truth is. I don't know. I actually don't. I hope the truth is White resigned here, because Black has all 8 pawns. However, I've seen 2 different notations for this game. One is White resigned here, and one is, in fact, this one says White resigned here. The other one is rook takes, e3 check, king here takes, and then White resigned. I don't know why a grandmaster or somebody good would do that. Why would you play rook f2 and allow that? And then resign. Why would you do that? So he must have resigned here, because that's better. Black still has 8 pawns left. Yeah, now the truth's going to hurt. Real bad. Yeah, then he can't get more bishops. Yeah. So that was the Kev Avalanche. That's how people used to play chess. Now draw every game, play Armageddon. Yeah, this was a slow game. This was in a team tournament with Czechoslovakia playing the Soviet Union. So this is serious. We're kidding around then. The kids want to win for their team. Yeah. So that was Kavalik's easily his most famous game. Everybody knows that game. Now the other game I don't know. He played a lot crazier than the other game. Yeah, this game boring compared to the next game. And he didn't even win the next game. Yeah. The next game, he played another top 10 player in the world, Lajos Portisch. Okay. Now the question is, has either Spencer or I given a lecture on Portisch in this class? The answer is fries. Didn't he do that?
I don't think so.
I thought he did. And then all I could say was I lost to Portisch's brother. I think Portisch is always losing to the guys that we lecture on. But actually, in the last lecture, Portisch, I think, beat Petrosian. But it wasn't on a person, it was an endgame lecture. And Petrosian lost. Okay, I played Portisch's brother, he crushed me, and I was white. He's an IM, his brother. Portisch was top 10 in the world for 30 years. Okay, easy. And most of Portisch's famous games are world champions beating him. Fischer, Karpov, Kasparov, those are his famous games. Those guys beating Portisch. Okay, so this is Portisch Kavalek. It was the King's Indian, I think. Yeah, okay. And this is the same-ish variation. I wasn't sure what it was, but it's all the same-ish to me.
Oh.
There you go. And Black played the burn variation, okay, which is, I don't think the most common at the top level, but Kasparov's played it. It's where you play for B5 for reasons I don't understand, even though I've played it. You play C6, A6, B5. Then you put your knight here and your bishop here, and you're all happy. Okay, so that's what he did. Okay, I mean, I've played it. Also, it was played, I believe it was game 1, but I've been wrong before, in a world championship match, Karpov-Kasparov. That game was a draw for sure. Okay, so Portisch, who's known for very solid, boring, technical play, plays crazy. And Kavalik is known for crazy play, so this game's great. E5 is pretty aggressive. Usually in the King's Indian, I don't recommend that because White's not developed so much. So playing E5, your center just collapses. That's a pretty nice center. And White collapses his own center. Okay, so now White's center is all attacked. But he's coming. He keeps coming. Now I think normally in the King's Indian, when you play the burn variation, C6, A6, B5, usually Black castles first. So maybe White was more aggressively inclined. Castles now, knight F3. Looks like a nice center, doesn't it? The engine agrees. The engine's like, yay, White's winning. We love White. Okay. Knight B6, attacking the C-pawn. Defending the C-pawn. Develops the knight. A4. Dang. Notice A5 is annoying. Usually A5 isn't winning a piece. Usually. Okay, so we better stop that. Takes, attacking the bishop. Takes back. C5. Now, the game doesn't make any sense because White's probably going to win material, but White's king is on E1 and Black's castled. And White's overrunning in the center, or the center is going to collapse. So, very hyper-modern chess from Black. A5, attacking the trapped knight, which has nowhere to go. Takes on D4. Knight takes. Takes on E5. White's center's collapsing, but Black's knight on B6 doesn't look very good. And here comes knight C6. Now we're going to vote because Karen left, so now there's 5 people, so we can vote. Otherwise it'll be 3-3. Oh, here she comes. It'll still be an odd number somehow. We'll get like an extension. Yeah. Obviously, you can't lose your queen, so you got to play queen C7 or queen E8. Let's vote. First, you should look at it a little. One of the moves is more obvious, but it has a problem. Which one's more obvious? Queen C7, but that hangs the E-pawn with check, and then I take the knight attacking your queen. Man, everything's, it's like a house of dominant checkmate. Okay, so he plays queen E8, defending the E-pawn, and now when you take my knight, my queen's not attacked. And again, White's center is totally collapsed, although that knight's sort of free. Okay, he takes the knight, White's up a knight, although it's pretty dangerous looking there. His king's no good. This knight's just, you know, so crazy position. Takes on F4, confusing the audience. The audience has no idea where that pawn came from. Did it do that? Did it just go here? I don't know. Even I don't know. Okay, now obviously we're threatening the bishop and the knight. How many pawns does Black have? Nobody knows, but he knows he likes the Kev Avalanche, so he's trying again. Trying against the better player this time. Yeah.
Sad because he's lost 2 pawns.
Knight D5. That's the move you guys would have played. Now, this is hanging. This is sort of hanging. However, if it was White's turn, what would White do? You.
Knight C7.
Knight C7, winning the queen. Queen on E8's trapped. So Kavalik did all he could to stop it. No, he didn't stop it. He just gave his queen away. Took the bishop and said, whatever. That was the first time that was ever done. 1975. Knight C7. And Black resigned because he lost his queen. No. Check. And Bishop E7. The engine move. So yeah, whatever. I lost my queen before you were born. Let's see, who's older? 40? No, Portisch is older. Yeah. Portisch, I think, could be wrong about this, is 1 day older than my dad. Like exactly 1 day. I think he's April 4th, my dad's April 5th, same year, 37. Either there, he's 1 day younger. All right. So actually, Portisch was older. You can see Kavalik didn't really play boring chess. Do they play like this now? No, they say, oh, players are good now, all the games are draws. The players want the games to be draws. When they don't want the games to be draws, and they play blitz and bullet and blindfold and 960, then the games aren't draws. Now, let's see who the smartest in the audience is. I'm going to bet against everyone. How come the players, when they play blitz, bullet, today I mean, 960, blindfold, how come they don't mind losing, but with slow chess, they mind losing more? What's the reason? There's a reason.
You put so much into it in a long game.
That's what you'd think. The truth hurts. Yeah. Now, they're really interested in their rating.
Rating point.
Yeah. Those other games aren't rated. They don't care about that.
Well, they're rated, aren't they?
Yeah, but they don't. No, they're like they don't care about
They
that.
have to
That
send
rating,
you-
nobody cares about that rating.
Right.
Yeah. Like, what's your USCF quick rating? You're like, what? Nobody knows what that is. Nobody watching knows what it is. They're like, I have a quick rating. What is it? Nobody cares. Right. Your slow rating, if you want to get invited to the top tournaments in the world, I recommend not being ranked number 30. I recommend being ranked number 4. So you can't risk your rating, so they all draw each other, the ratings don't change. Then when somebody good is getting better, he can't get in there. No, he's good. Don't get him out of here, right? Like Artemayev, number 10 in the world, but you never heard of him. They don't let him play in there. So he beats everybody else.
Russian champion.
Yeah, he's a good player. Okay. This is 1975. We didn't know there were ratings. Where's the rating list? Is it on the internet? I don't think so. All right, so he takes the queen, takes the knight. And now let's see who the smartest in the class is. I have no idea what the answer is. Somebody has to help me. What's the material imbalance here? I figured it out. I counted.
Black has a pawn and knight for a queen.
Well, actually, 2 pawns.
None of that was right.
Okay.
Yeah, because they both have one knight.
That's true.
2
Yeah.
pawns and a bishop.
2 pawns and a bishop for a queen. Sounds like a queen's better, right? But that knight's attacked and that rook's attacked.
Right.
This rook is trapped and the Kev Avalanche or something. Yeah. So the computer's like, oh boy, I'm a queen up. But they didn't have computers then, so they were like, I don't know, I resigned. Both sides resigned simultaneously. Yeah. Now, one thing I've noticed when I teach classes, especially in this room, especially to group 2 in the camp, group 2 in my camp can't go to the 1 o'clock class. They're not good enough yet. Yeah, I wish I was telling, I'm telling the truth. Anyway, when I say what's the material imbalance, they don't know what I'm talking about. They're like, I don't know, somebody's winning, leave me alone. I'm like, well, what does white have that black does? And they're like, I don't know. Like, does white have a queen? Yeah, does black? No. Okay, so white's up a queen. What does black have? I don't know. Black has 2 bishops, white has 1 bishop. So black has a bishop for a queen, and black has 2 more pawns. Now, how many passed pawns are there? Nobody knows. I'll get 3 different answers in this class, and they all look at the same position. Add up all the passed pawns and tell me how many there are, total.
4?
5.
How many pass pawns?
Huh. I got 4, I got 5.
5.
What do you got? I don't know. That's a third answer. And the other one's abstained.
I got 5.
6.
So we got 4, 5, 6. I don't know. 2?
4.
4? 2, 4, 5, and 6. 4 answers.
I'm 5.
5?
5. I'm okay.
So, well, obviously these are passed pawns. And obviously this one is. And obviously this one is.
Yeah.
So I've argued with my fellow chess players about whether this one is.
Yeah, I think so.
And everybody that I think, for the most part, thinks it is. Some think it's not. But, so there's 5. All right. White played knight c7, saving his knight, attacking the rook, I guess. Rook d8, rook c1. There's a lot of analysis on this game, but I used an engine. Engine's better than guys 40 years ago analyzing it. Those guys, yeah. Okay. So far, White's playing fine. White's up a queen. White's doing great. Okay. And in this position, where you could argue if White's technique is okay, he played, here, he's probably still winning after his move, but maybe not. Here he played a very suspicious move recommended on my stream. What did White do? Remember, it's recommended on my stream. Yeah, he took that. That's not a good move. No. Yeah. I think bishop c4 is the best move, and the engine really likes White. Although, position's sort of weird. Anyway, he took this. Now, White has a queen for a rook. But Black has a passed pawn on the 6th rank. White's king is a little suspicious. And Black has a lot of pawns. All right. And in this position, this is where he messes up. Yeah, here's where he definitely messes up. And the engine says if we check on b2 and then put the queen here, probably White should win eventually, maybe, probably. You know, White's up a queen for a rook. Yeah. And here he made a very bad move. And I think the reason is he underestimated Black's counterplay against White's king. And actually, if you're White in this position, you have an issue. The issue is, are you afraid Black is going to attack your king, or are you afraid of this? If you're afraid of both, it's hard to do anything. So if you go check, put the queen here, that stops the e-pawn, puts the queen in the center. Good move, good idea. But instead he played queen a7, which has 2 ideas. You want to take the pawn on e7, and you stop e2, because the queen would then take the rook. So you can't play this anymore. So queen a7 is a blunder. And if he doesn't play queen a7, the engine thinks White's winning. Of course, that's the problem with chess today, is the engines see everything. But when you're playing in a tournament and you have these crazy positions where there's 20 legal moves and the material's imbalanced, you're just totally guessing. And then the engine sees millions of positions and plays the right move. No fair.
Wait, I missed something. Why?
Yeah.
Why is that a blunder? Queen e7?
Oh, I didn't tell you why yet.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, Black starts attacking White's king, and that queen's no good on a7. So, what's the only drawing move for Black going for White's king?
G5.
G5. You want to play rook h6 check and f5 check, and it's mate. So G5, now I can play rook here check. Hooray. Yeah. Next, there's another thread which is pretty funny. Now, okay, so White's, got to watch it here. White could lose. Careful. Okay. He played queen e7, and the problem, and in my opinion, I can't prove it, I think White missed Black's next move. That's my opinion. I think he saw g5 and saw queen e7, that for the next move he went, oh, I didn't see that. That's what I think happened. I think the most obvious move is rook h6 check, then king g4, and you can't move the f pawn because it's pinned. So there are no checks. And white's still up a queen for a rook. And I think he just missed the next move. As you all do. What's that?
King G6.
Well, queen takes rook check on d6 might refute
yeah, that's
that.
probably
Might. Yeah, you gotta watch
small.
it. Yeah. Truth hurts.
Truth hurts.
Yeah. And if you're my student, and most of you are, there's two moves you look at before you make any move. Checks and captures. Especially when you're playing Kavalik, you got to look at checks. Exactly. Yeah, one guy got it. 1 out of a million people get my jokes. What's that called? The Dennis Miller ratio. Right. So rook h6 is check. He saw that. What's the other check? G4. And now you have a problem. Your problem is I have perpetual check. Because in this position, when I played rook h6 and you played king g4, the black g pawn was blocking the g file. So I couldn't play rook g6 check. And this is a common idea at the top level, is you use your opponent's pawns as a shield, because they can't take their own pawns. They can take your pawns. So if your opponent's mating you on the h file and the g file, but they have a pawn there, put your king in front of their pawn, they're like, get my pawn out of there so I can get my queens and rooks in there. So he did. And now he can go rook g6, rook h6, rook g6, rook h6, rook g6, rook h6. I don't think he saw g4 check. I think that's why he played queen a7, queen e7. It's also possible on move 33, 34, 35, he was in time trouble. And by possible, that's pretty likely in this kind of game. Yeah. And then just perpetual check. A nice boring draw, just like they play now. Yeah. And then they agree to a draw because it's perpetual. Yeah. So Kavalik obviously wasn't afraid to do whatever he had to do. Sack everything. Sack a queen, sack 2 exchanges, 4 passed pawns, 5 passed pawns. Didn't care. Also, the rook on h1 never moved in this game. I guess Portisch didn't want that. And Portisch was known as not an exciting player. So this was a real exciting game for Portisch. Portisch was grinding it out. Yeah. And Kavalik, obviously, this was his kind of game. So Kavalik was at his peak in the 70s. Obviously, Montreal 79. 78's where he won a lot of his tournaments. When he did win the U.S. Championship, clear first, he got 10 out of 14. A point ahead of second place. He's a pretty good player. Had a Tarjan, who was also a good player. I could do one about him, but he's still playing. Tarjan took 30 years off, and now he's playing again. And in his 60s, he beat Kramnik. So he came back. Wasn't a librarian anymore. And yeah, Kavalik went from Czechoslovakia to the U.S. He's lived in Virginia for the last million years, and he's writing and coaching. And now I don't know what he's doing because he's not playing. He's not writing and coaching very much anymore either. So maybe he's retired. Yeah. Anyway, great player of the past, Lubomir Kavalek. Go Kavalik, and don't tell Short. Shh. Yeah, they don't like each other. Yeah. All right. One of the many grandmasters Short does not like. All right. See you guys next time. And if I don't, then it'll be Spencer. Probably Spencer. Yeah. He won't be sick next week. We'll be in Vegas next week. I'm not lecturing next week. Yeah. All right. Half point bye.